This conference will now be recorded.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, yeah.
Yes, it's okay.
Brilliant. So I've called this the Road to ISO 44001 implementation, but really it's based on what I've done is added to an old presentation I did for Institute for Collaborative Working conference called the Road to BS 11000 implementation. And it's based around that, but it's updated with a few more slides. And I hope you'll appreciate it. I am a great believer in the value that quality professionals bring to the standard. A lot of times in my experience, people who attend the various ICW conferences, the Institute for Collaborative Working conferences, and other people, you get a very diverse range of people interested. And sometimes people don't like to have quality people involved because they have that old-fashioned idea of what the profession's like. They don't really get that we are value adding, and you know, we are very used to culture change and bringing people to compliance. So I really feel that ISO 44001 is very definitely relevant to people and members of the Chartered Quality Institute. So the ICW states that it's business relationships formed by committed organisations to maximise joint performance for achievement of mutual objectives and creation of additional value. It's a systematic way of capturing what probably very successful organisations already do, but it was the first of its kind. It was partly started by the government and by the Institute for Collaborative Working, known then as CRAFT, and they worked together to overcome the delays to major government projects that was happening through lack of collaboration. So when you think about it, the standard is based on a common vision and collaborative leadership, collaborative culture and behaviours, collaborative processes and tools. A lot of the time people think, oh, we just have to make the people on the project work collaboratively, and forgetting that collaborative leadership also has its own suite of behaviours that might be slightly different. But as quality people, we know in ISO 9001, you know, leadership is very much pushed. And so there is another crossover with what we do for a living. So a summary of the standard, this is just an agenda from one of my implementation workshops here, joint workshop with clients. I'll just quickly talk about the joint management team. You can see there, vision, values and behaviours, objectives and policy, behavioural assessment, relationship maturity measurements, knowledge management, which also includes not just confidentiality and what we might share and what we will share. It also now includes what are the drivers for working together to innovate, what drives success, relationship risks. It's all about cultural risk, behaviours. It can be financial interdependence if you have an alliance framework, you have shared commercial arrangements. Relationship risks also includes very much behaviours again, and we can relate that to commercial. Before, a lot of projects didn't actually realise or even want to admit the financial impact of the lack of collaborative working back in the day. There's issues resolutions. How can we stop things from escalating up to project board? Value creation and innovation. How do we create extra value for the client? And this is something that especially professional services love, creating extra value for the client. And the exit strategy, now this is the scariest name in the standard. And it's really about triggered disengagements and how we can keep a relationship with our clients going forward after this project is done. And it's also about lessons learned. This is just a quick overview. So as I've said, I feel we've got a lot to offer the collaborative working world. I make this big joke that I'm on the quality and collaboration showbiz circuit, basically because I'm on the consig. I represent the designer on the steering group on the consig, and I always joke that's because Arup didn't turn up. No offence to anyone from Arup. and they asked WSP, but we're great, so of course they'd ask us. And I go to different conferences and I see the sort of perspective from both the quality and the collaborative working professional perspective, and it's been really interesting. And there very much is a difference in approach from implementing 9001. I want to talk about my experiences, because you come into contact with people like performance consultants, behavioural coaching. There's a whole array, or as another one, the template droppers. They'll drop a manual and forget to have changed the name from their previous company that they've worked with, you know, the type. So this was managing an implementation during the merger. It's when WSP and Parsons Brinkerhoff merged in 2015. And it's important to note what we already had. I'm not going to lie, implementing the standard in professional services is, say, a lot easier than implementing it with a meat and potatoes site contractor, small site contractor. We were already quite mature in terms of collaborative working. What we already had was senior management commitment, an established business management system, established and well-controlled client management processes. We had a variety of departments and projects, and thus a variety of clients and joint venture partners, an internal collaborative working resource, me, and a dedicated and professional workforce. I'd already worked for Balfour Beatty Group for 2 years in BS 11000, and when WSP merged with Parsons Brinkerhoff, I was the deputy quality manager at PB, and they asked me if I wanted to take this on, and I got moved sideways and now have a very long job title, and people at the CQI laugh at the small font on my business card. So the start date was January 2015. So what we did first, and this is the strategic element, if you're looking at the old stages of the standard, which are now all in Clause 8 operation, we formed a UK-wide BS 11000 steering group. I cannot emphasise that one enough. Have a steering group, have as many representatives from management and different business units as you can. You know, make sure you have obviously your SER. In our case, it was the COO. UK SER, he was appointed. We want people from corporate bids, we want people from each business unit, appoint what amounts to a BS 11000 implementation manager, and agree the scope for certification. Now, you know, there's lots of options these days for certification scopes. You don't have to be a legal entity, you can be a one-off. This was the implementation overview. So we had our policy at the top for the group SER. There's the appointment memo, the steering group. You have to have an internal audit program that you're auditing the standard, it's included. What we did with the corporate relationship management plan was strategic account plans, basically client management plans. What we realised that in the stage between the corporate CBR management system and implementing it on the project, we needed a layer which showed key client and JV relationship management, because of the way we were structured. So just think about how many levels there are in your organisation before you get to implement it on a project. So of course we also have behaviours, workshops, internal and external meetings. And once we work with the projects, you have an appointed project SER. SER stands for Senior Executive Responsible. You can also think of it as the representative for collaboration. And obviously the collaborative activities based on the standard. So the steering group, or how senior management commitment, is really, really important. So what you've got to make sure is your steering. I'm sure I'm teaching a grandma to suck eggs here, but this is my experience. The steering group had a remit for organising and implementing the following activities: the organisation, resources, competencies and behaviours, measuring, monitoring and reviewing the relationships within the collaborative relationship programme. You talk about projects for consideration, the certificate scope, the collaborative policy statement, and external auditor liaison. And one thing, it's always important to have the letter of appointment, as I've said before, of the UK SER from the Chief Executive Officer or whoever, and to also make sure that you can prove you've assigned competent people to the steering group, because that's something that the external certification body will actually ask you to prove, that you've assigned collaborative people to your steering group and that they've been obviously assessed for collaborative behaviours. So our scope of registration is the, oh no, I'm trying to get rid of my screen, collapse, that's it. Right, the management system for those client and external collaborator relationships identified and managed within the collaborative relationship programme of WSP Group Holdings Limited. We have since added supplier relationships to this. Okay, this is an overview of the collaborative relationship programme. So as you can see, I explained it maybe not very well earlier. At the top is the corporate RMP and the company-wide management of it. There's the key client external collaborator management with the key account plans on projects or contract actual ISO 44001 implementations. You have the project and contract relationship management plans. So our aims are basically to enhance existing collaboration and innovation processes, have a systematic basis for continual improvement of these activities. We want to build new client, external collaborator relationships and maintain and improve existing ones. It's also about empowering our staff in their own personal career development, enhancing our staff client management skills, and further improve our staff's working life as well as benefit the company overall. I have a boss who always says people don't leave their job, they leave their line manager. So you can think of the collaborative behavioural aspect of a 44001 implementation actually helping your staff's working life, like we want to help our staff when we implement quality assurance processes. So this is a very old page from the original management system done in the wonderful Smart Draw. And this is based on the 8-stage framework as it was in BS 11000. So you have the policy there, the corporate relationship management plan there, where you can get help. I produce briefing notes for client liaison, briefing notes for relationship staff. I also produced the three key documents. You need to prove that you've done your research in terms of awareness, knowledge, and internal assessment for strategy before you even start on partner selection. So there it says provides a strategic framework to establish and improve collaborative relationships in organisations and addresses the requirements for collaborative relationships to ensure they are effective, optimised and deliver enhanced benefits to all stakeholders involved. Here's the strategic documents I just mentioned. I did a potential value analysis report, strategic business objectives report, an initial risk assessment report. And here's the overview of the people before I talked about key account plans and the other picture. There you've got project SER, goes to key account manager, goes to me, and goes to the BS 11000 steering group, which I chair, and the UK SER. And the above model shows internal comms and reporting flow between different stages and accompanying roles. I just think it's really important to sort of always emphasize communication and get as much involvement from people as possible. So I redrafted a ton of documents to be put into the WSP way of doing things. So here's a gentleman gesturing at some design, how to manage the implementation. This is just my recommendations. I absolutely, please regard them as just my recommendations. I was empowered to do the following, and I had management commitment to undertake the following. It's really important to have senior management empowerment, to have a sponsor. My job was to liaise with clients, external collaborators known as JV partners, project staff and other relevant staff. I did relevant management system documentation, authoring and maintenance, training and briefing regarding the standard, internal audit activities regarding PS 11000. I liaised with external auditors and managed closeout of audit findings. We didn't use an external consultant because they said I already was consultant in this, which they were right, I was. So they used me. And all this is in liaison with the steering group, because obviously I can't work alone. Implementing the standard is reliant on your colleagues and having an amazing workforce to work with. I actually also I was one of like a few people who did the Perrin-Neville Clark ICW 44001 internal auditor cert. Gosh, 5 or 6 years ago, I've forgotten. And I really do think that it's worth going on that sort of course, because doing an audit course or whatever, form of 44001 course, it really helps you know the standard, but auditing courses definitely make you know the standard. So my top tip is be in regular contact with your external auditing body. Listen to the experiences of your peers, sometimes not what to do. Obviously, don't tell them that. Internally network. Someone might already have an interested client or JV partner. Review existing management system processes. Do not create extra work for you or anyone else. And this is particularly true now, as we're all sharing clauses with Annex SL. Think operationally when implementing on projects, no template dropping. There's this great story of the consultant with the 85 templates in then PS 11000. And quite frankly speaking, I don't want to, hey, I'm a fellow, but speaking as a fellow of the ICW, I am not sure how anyone could actually make 85 templates from 44,000. So work closely with your client and JV account managers, work closely with the project and contract staff. And I would advise, before you have a joint collaborative workshop with your clients or JV partners, have one with your project team, because you've got to sort of think about what are we going to negotiate? And obviously there might be risks with dealing with that particular client. Sometimes local government sort of implementations, they may say have staff hostile to privatisation or things like that, going back a bit. So it's all about building relationships internally and externally, funnily enough. I can't stress enough, your organisation, if they're successful, are already doing a lot of this. It's about capturing the good work and sort of doing any gaps and documenting it and being able to measure and track. So the assessments, we did gap assessment, stage 1 and stage 2. Gap assessment, they are really useful if you do it yourself or you get your external auditor in. It's preventive action, old school. I miss the clause preventive action. I know I probably shouldn't say that, but I miss it. From 9001, 2008. Stage 1, we had 2 days, which was corporate company-wide processed as a management system. Stage 2 is a duration of 3 days. It was a major joint venture, county council, a major railway construction project design team, JV partner, and a project from a large complex framework. And I was present during all the audits with staff, clients, and external collaborators. I'm not going to lie, I run external audits like they're a military operation. So all this was managed for 9 months by the steering group. The UK SER, Key Client Coordinator, Major Head of Bids, the discipline representatives and me. We implemented it in liaison with the relevant key account managers, project, contract and JV staff. And this was true collaborative behaviour. I'm very blessed to have some amazing colleagues. So this is a quote from the UK SER at the time. To achieve this accreditation with a completely internal effort with no outside consultancy is rare, and it is down to businesses' true commitment to collaboration, which has been a long time part of our culture and evident long before our efforts began to obtain certification. In addition, there were no minor non-conformances. Again, this is rare and is testament to the professionalism and dedication of our staff. There were 9 opportunities for improvement and 1 observation raised. For a company as complex and mature as ours, this is a major achievement, we feel. I think it's also relevant, and this is in terms of sort of myself and others being all trained auditors. I think as a quality professional, you know what they're going to find or what they're going to look for, you know as much, and you try to mitigate that as much as possible. In the beginning, in about 8 or 9 years ago, there were some people at the ICW who weren't, say, as great supporters of quality managers as they could be, which led me to actually pen a piece in the opinion bit of Quality World magazine about it, that raised a few eyebrows at the consig. But I just felt that, we are, we're not gatekeepers. We're here to add value, and all the majors I've ever heard of in terms of this standard, none of those were implemented by quality people. They're all from project controls or contracts and bids. I'm being blunt, but that's it. I think we have a lot of value to add. So in 2016, we had regular steering group meetings, live prospects and project register. We had BS 11,000 audits in the October with no non-conformances again. We implemented a FM Conway Westminster framework. We did a large amount of bid work, including global. We had behavioural assessors for Highways England, behavioural assessment framework. We did highways and bridges CDFs. In 2017, we met with Michelle and we brought their scope of certification over to us, supplier relationships. They used a consultant and it's more light touch due to supplier scope and projects, but it was really good. They're really hot on lean, and that became really valuable to us. Their lean expertise in value creation as part of 44,000. The steering group led to it being discussed at the leadership team meeting. I would mention that the steering group is kind of regarded as our management review, as well as the SHEC leadership team management review, but particularly for C, you need to ensure that something acts as a management review in the clause or it's discussed at what you call your management review. So the steering group continued with it. So I think there was a short burst without the SER, and then they came back, and we brought the Michelle rep in as supplier representative because it's all about inclusion. We got our supplier relationship added to our scope of certification, and we continued building an external collaborative working consultancy business. We actually have now in our learning and development team collaborative behavioural framework experts, and they do internal and external client work. So we're getting quite diverse at WSP. So we achieved transition to 44,000 in March 2019. It now follows the Annex XL, I always mispronounce that, I apologise, SL model, which has the same clauses as 9001. And the requirements of BS 11,000 are now in Clause 8, operation of the standard. Collaborative working can provide the basis to create new value, which could not be achieved by the organisation working independently. So this is from Mr. Paul Greenwood's famous diagram. Don't worry, he won't mind, I've nicked it. if you want to see 9001 and 44001, how the outlook. So this is a quick snapshot of the current CBR management system. So this is the page of the BMS with everything on that's relevant. We've split up the corporate relationship management plan into different procedures, guidance notes and plans and templates. I'm probably going to finish early, actually. I didn't think I would be so fast. Collaborative business relationships and auditing. So internal auditing. I really have to emphasize that this is a standard of nuance and no one size fits all. I actually got rebadged a transition to ISO 44001 auditor's course by BSI about 3 or 4 years ago, and I could tell that maybe some people didn't quite realize that you don't audit like it's 9001. It's really important to note this. You can't, you know, it's really, for me, and I might be misinterpreting it, it's very much a sort of quality and mixed with business. It's just very interesting, and no two implementations are the same. And of course, you know, 44,000 is not the only way to do collaborative working. Constructing Excellence are very good on alliancing, especially on shared commercial arrangements. So I recommend, you know, you look up some of their stuff. That's quite interesting. BSI and others run ISO 44001 auditing courses, and it does, as I've said before, really helps your knowledge of the standard. It's currently not covered by IRCA, so you can't get registered as a 44001 auditor, or I would be. So I'm currently QMS internal on IRCA. I would say ensure it is in your national audit programme, because you will get a major if it's not part of your audit programme, it hasn't been audited. It is really important to treat it seriously. I know of places where they haven't treated it seriously. They've left it with absolutely no quality support whatsoever, and left with people who aren't used to management systems or international standards. And unfortunately, you know, they've wasted money by incurring majors. And also there's a lot of unregulated consultants running around, again, not people with a background in quality, who if left unchecked, can make life difficult, because as quality professionals, you may be asked to come and clear it up afterwards, let's face it. So external auditing, again, I'm not being rude about bids, marketing or contract teams, but I've had complaints from external auditors about it happening like that. One auditor told me he was left alone in a room many times with just documents to go through, and that he really valued the fact that I had a proper audit plan and I got the UK SER to come in with him. He met the head of learning and development, where she talked about her collaborative behavioural framework. I had him with the head of client management, where she went through her processes. And it's really important to have them treated seriously, and that this is an important standard. You know, a lot of clients see this as a given, that you must have it. They will expect to see your collaborative business objectives joined up to your general business objectives or KPIs. Everything shouldn't be in isolation. It should be truly integrated to your existing management system and KPIs. Collaborative behavioural competencies of 44,001 implementing staff are expected to be measured, including yours. And again, I would advocate always treating this standard seriously and making sure that, as far as you can, that your colleagues and management treat this standard seriously. So I haven't really done a slide for this, but I'll talk about collaborative business relationships in the wider world. There is, of course, the Institute for Collaborative Working. They're really valuable. They have all kinds of different special interest groups. I've been on the professional development one for years. They have some really interesting conferences. They were having smart cities conferences before a lot of people had even heard of the concept, I think. There's also Constructing Excellence, which has a collaborative working discussion group. They're really good. And they've got a lot, as I said, about alliancing, and they've had really, really good talks from people who managed Heathrow and other places. There's a lot of performance and behavioural consultants around. I would emphasise very strongly that before you think about using them, you make sure that they have a background in social psychology or behavioural psychology or HR. Unfortunately, there are some who just have a background in project controls, and I've had some staff get quite upset about how they were talked to by those people. Obviously, you have no control over who, you know, you're bidding with, who's going to be sent by the client to interview the senior staff who will be put forward at bid stage for interviews. So it's also worth thinking about, you know, you probably won't have anything to do with this, but it's very important that staff are trained before they go into, you know, interviews that will involve collaborative behaviours. And it's also very important that you learn about the style of the performance consultancy who will be doing that kind of interview, because there's one hit, they always start, they have a pretend emergency that happens without any warnings, and see how you react, and there's things like that. So there are preparation activities that you can do. Also, again, collaborative leadership is so hot right now, so it's not just about the behaviours on the team. I myself am not a great fan of relationship management plans with tons of hyperlinks and very thin ones. You know, you're not always going to have access to every single document. You don't have to write a Bible, but having an overview with links is the best way of approaching it. I think that's really all I have at the moment. So I think you could probably draw more information out of me with questions, if that makes sense. Hope I didn't talk too fast.
I am going to turn on my camera. Are there any questions? Gemma says there's no questions in the chat. Is anybody wanting to unmute themselves and ask a question? Can't see.
Oh, I was 40 minutes. I wasn't that far. Sorry, I was really worried.
Yeah, Stuart, were you wanting to ask a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. Thank you for the presentation.
Sorry, I couldn't understand that. Something went a bit wrong. Stuart, could you repeat that?
Yeah, firstly, thank you for your presentation. It was very useful.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Could you just give the audience an update on the status of UCAS accreditation for the standard?
Right, okay. David Hawkins told me I was at the ICW offices for a committee meeting on Tuesday, and he's currently, they're currently in talks with UCAS at the moment. So it's kind of sort of happening, it's trundling along. I don't think they're near the end, they're kind of at the middle of the process.
Yeah, I actually work for a certification body, BM Charter, who is going through the process at the moment, and have been now witnessed by UCAS, and hopefully will be getting accreditation in the next few weeks.
Oh, brilliant. I'm not quite sure how things are going. Sorry, I meant in terms of sort of IRCA related. I know that the ICW are in talks with them, so you may know more than me.
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly at the moment, there were 7 CVs in the pilot project, but I'm led to believe there may only be 2 who receives accreditation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I won't say who they both are.
I don't know. Well, let's hope BSI is one of them.
I'm led to believe.
Well, no, don't worry. Don't tell any tales. I don't want you to get into trouble. Thank you. That's really interesting. I appreciate you telling me.
But I think the thing that people need to think about the standard, because I both audited it and implemented it as a consultant, is that what you're looking for is why you're entering into collaboration. It's all about added value. And I always say 1 + 1 = 3.
No, I hope that came across with my standard. I think it's really important that you've said that. It's all about, for us as professional services, as I said in the PowerPoint, we are creating extra value for the client. That is one of our motivating drivers.
It is, yes.
Oh, thank you.
And just
Thank you.
I think one final thing is that, and you did mention it, it's a completely different way of auditing to 9000.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
Hardwired standard. It's more softer issues at times.
Yeah, and you do have to be sort of think on your feet because it's quite nuanced in places. And yeah.
So I think it's anybody should go on some sort of 44001 audit training to get you away from that.
I totally think so. I totally think so.
But I'm sure other people have got questions. I better let them in. But thank you for your presentation, Louise.
Oh, really kind. Thanks, Stuart.
Cheers there.
Thank you, Stuart. There's lots of questions now in the chat from Maz, if I can call you that. It says how the business collaborative relationships can be enhanced further. Are there any specific considerations?
Oh, I think I more or less covered it. I just feel that the considerations, actually, what you could review is what your corporate sort of innovation activities are and what is taken to projects, because we have a thing called the Future Ready Initiative, and that's quite clearly saleable to clients. It's important to capture everything, because I find in large companies there are all these initiatives running independently of each other, and you might not know all about, you might not have captured every single one, you know. I mean, at the moment you have, in terms of quality, you've got Get It Right Initiative, you've got Project 13, you know, you've got an ISO implementation. Are they talking to each other within your company? You know, have you got everything? Have you got all the knowledge that you need? Have you networked with the right people, internal stakeholders? That's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
There's a question from Mark that says, what is procurement professionals' view of the standard in the supply chain world?
Sometimes I think sometimes in my experience, they think of it solely, they think of collaboration in terms of the NEC4 contract, and that's it to them. They think of it in terms of the alliancing shared commercial arrangements, and that they'll have a one-page appendices that might mention the 44,001 requirement compliance without certification. So sometimes there is a bit of resistance. It is very, but if you're in a field, say like National Highways or HS2, obviously they're forced to take it more seriously because it's part of the work instructions from the client. But I do find that a lot of them just do tend to like as a compliance rather than getting the standard. Hopefully that's changing. But now it's much more important for generally the clients, the senior management at the clients, to think about how they are going to have collaborative behaviours with suppliers long term, because say on a nuclear job it's going to run for years and years, you know. So hopefully it's changing, but unfortunately some people see it as compliance only in a one page in the appendices. Have I made sense? I hope so.
Does that answer your question, Mark? Take your silence as a yes. There's a question from Ian, and what did it say? What have you personally learned about collaboration that you didn't appreciate before? And I know this is something that when I was talking with you a couple of years ago, that for me, the whole psychology was something that I hadn't considered when doing collaborative projects, and that really helped this last year when I've been doing collaborative projects. So yes, so Louise, what personally have you learned?
I learned a lot about, I don't know, it's hard to explain. I just found it really, really interesting. I learned a lot about the impact of behaviours financially on your company if you're not collaborative. I've learned that collaborative relationship risks, such as cultural risks, they really do have a monetary aspect. I mean, I think I probably knew it, but I didn't feel it emotionally. I also learned far more about the contract side of it. Oh, am I muted or something? Yeah, I learned more about, sorry, I just saw some notes on the side. Yeah, I learned an awful lot about the monetary aspect, the risks of bad behaviours impacting a company commercially. I learned far more about contracts than I realised before. And I learned that, you know, quality, actually what really came to me was how much of quality is psychology. We just don't talk about it as much. But, you know, I used to have this joke, quality is how do we make the comply with our systems, you know, the Pareto principle, 20% people are responsible for 80% of the problems. You know, there are people who do not like using management systems, even though their company wants them to use the management system they pay them to use. So it really actually gave me more feedback about the quality profession. It sort of really sort of added value to what I do regarding 9001, I have to say. But yeah, it also, I learned a lot about exit strategy and disengagement, which I thought was really useful, the disengagement aspects, the going through the triggers for disengagement. That's it.
Yeah, I think personally there's a whole other presentation on the psychology involved in quality management and getting people on board, and yeah,
I am
just from my own experiences. Yeah,
I am doing a self-funded MBA. I'm on a study break, but I hope to do my dissertation on that. Funnily enough.
Oh, she's always studying.
Psychology of people who won't use quality management systems, you know, even though
There's
it really.
A question from Andrew Wood that says, can you expand on the differences between ISO 9001 audit and the 44001 audit?
Thanks, Andrew, Mr. Ward, for asking me the exam question. I would absolutely say, I don't know, I find collaborative business relationships very instinctive for me, so I find it quite hard to articulate sometimes, but I would say that it's not sometimes that you can get very technical with 9001 with the measuring, and you can get very sort of corrective action, and it can get very sort of spreadsheety. This sometimes can be quite psychological, and it involves sort of it involves a lot more sort of networking, a lot more sort of, I don't know, you can't, I'm not saying everybody does this by any means, but you can't just lay down procedures and processes, drop it on people and expect them to do it, which you maybe could do conceivably through a 9001 management system. This is all sort of sitting and engaging with people and talking to them and keeping them involved at every stage. That is it for me. You don't have, you know, you can't be a checklist Charlie with this. Am I making sense? I'm not sure I am, but
yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it's the psychological aspect, and you know, you've got to leave your auditor's ego at the side, you know. And I've had people, they try and sell these like 44001 evidence apps, and I don't personally like those. I appreciate they might be useful for people, but to me, you know, it's not, you can't, I don't always agree with just showing an auditor stuff from your like click this, click that. You know, you need to be able to explain it and understand it.
Yeah, so it's sometimes going in and having to do a whole change management project even
Yeah,
before you're getting down to the quality side of things. Yeah.
yeah.
Peter Fraser, long question. I have not heard of 44,001 until now. I hadn't until I met Louise. So why do we need a standard for collaborative business relationships, and what good was a certificate do anyone? You mentioned collaborative processes. What are these? Surely all processes should involve collaboration. Do the process approach and project management not require people to collaborate?
Unfortunately, sorry, what was the gentleman's name?
Peter Fraser, if he wants to
Well,
unmute.
Peter might live in an ideal world, but sadly not in my experience. Unfortunately, it's the fact that 44,001 helps you capture everything you're doing. It systematically documents and tracks collaboration. People don't, unfortunately, in my experience, necessarily collaborate. Yes, in an ideal world they would work together, but I've worked in organisations with silos, with narcissists leading, teams of endemic bullying, and people not being accountable. Because collaboration tracks accountability. It notes how much money you're losing by not being collaborative. If you put monetary assignations to your relationship risk register, I think it's really useful because it gives people a safe way of constructively challenging their client. Because a lot of people feel very, very intimidated with a client. There was a case at Southeast section I audited to do with Network Rail, and their contract went from time and expenses to lump sum, and they were able to use the implementation of BSN 11,000 to say safely, they felt, because they did feel very intimidated apparently, which was, we need a quicker turnaround of your review of our designs. And they felt that the standard gave them that opportunity. It's not just an inward standard, it's also it's safely constructively interacting in an accountable and honest way with your client, JV partners and suppliers. That's why some people want the certificate. And also, there is an element of clients maybe wanting their supplier you to handle collaboration, and getting you to have the certificate is another way of doing that.
Yeah, I don't know how many people work in public sector, but I've worked with NHS healthcare projects, and they just don't know how to collaborate. It's a huge issue that as soon as you ask them to do something, they've got the union or the trust that they can go to and go, I don't want to do this. So yeah, it's something that I guess in public sectors could be taught a lot better, implemented. There's a question from Grace Wright that says, are there any particular methods you have found to be helpful for determining collaborative behaviours?
Well, I'm not a specialist in behaviours, but we use strength scope assessments. They're quite reasonable, and they're a really good way of looking at what your sort of collaborative strengths are. If you hold on a mo, I can bring mine up. I'm not proud. Have I taken off shared screen? I cannot. Oh, is it gone?
I've taken mine off so you can share your screen now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll just show you an example of the one that I've got two that I've used. Well, they've been used on me. I'm not going to share anybody else's, obviously. Talk amongst yourselves, sorry. I know that in terms of collaboration in teams, a lot of people like Insights, which is based on the Carl Jung typology for personality types. Unfortunately, that's not so much based on empirical evidence, say like trait theory is in terms of personality. I'll show you a strength scope brochure. That's easier. It seems to be easier. Right, share screen. How do I share screen? Excuse my Battersea internet is very old and decrepit. Takes ages to load. My dad's internet in Shropshire is better than this. It's quicker because it's newer. That's what I suspect. Okay, so I'll just. Can you see it okay? So this is the wheel. They're quite good at. So you have people internal, your emotional regulation. This strength cluster concerns how you make sense of, express and manage emotions. The people relational, which is external people. This strength cluster concerns establishing and maintaining productive relations with others. Execution. This strength cluster concerns delivering results, what and how they are delivered. And thinking is internal tasks, which is this strength cluster concerns how you go about gathering and using information to make decisions. So that's one for individuals. So they're called strength scope. So people using strengths in their organizations. See if there's another one. A lot of, before sort of this got really popular a few years ago, it was all about psychometric tests. I think they're coming back. I'm not quite sure because I'm not entirely. Ooh. Here's the insights one. I'm not entirely au fait with the latest in collaborative behavioural. Of course, at National Highways, they have the IBIP model, which was put together in suppliers forums, which is really, really good. They've got things like constructively challenging, accountability, and other key points. Because, you know, saying yes to everybody means that you have to put somebody at the back of the queue and you might be letting them down. That's another form of collaborative relationship. So here's the insights, discovery, personality profile for me. Usually you do it in a team, but because I was working with loads of projects where they'd had this, I had work paid for me to actually be assessed using Jung's typology. Some people actually, you know, love Myers-Briggs. Has everyone heard of Myers-Briggs? So I'm just trying to see the overview. Okay, here we go. So apparently I'm a motivating inspirer, accommodating, motivating, inspirer, focused. I'm not exactly sure what that means, to be honest. Yeah, so that's an overview of one of them. I mean, if you want to email me afterwards, I can talk more about it, because I could take too long talking about this because it's such a diverse field.
Do you want me to put do you want to put your email in the chat?
Sure, yeah.
Or,
you put it in if you want.
I'll do that. I've lost my email, but I'll do that. There's another question from Ian. Is there a difference between collaboration and integration? How do they work together, if at all?
Yeah, I'd say they work very much together, because you have to collaborate to integrate, don't you, really? It depends what you're integrating. I don't know. I mean, it really does depend what you're integrating. I think collaborative working helps most things. Of course, you might want a traditional supplier-client type of contract, sort of contractual relationship. With some people, that's actually easier than being truly collaborative, because there are risks to you know, a proper alliance or collaborative relationship, you know, like shared commercial risk could be one. But if you're integrating a new system, you really do have to be collaborative, I feel. Unless, of course, you have the final say and you have to be the one to push it through. You know, it's how do we cope? How do we deal with the blockers? You know, it really, I think, is very situational. I'm sorry, I can't say a sort of like yes or no answer. To me, it's very, you know, based on each situation, each case study, but I do think it is an important part of integration.
Brilliant. Another question from Grace. Any advice on how to get technical and process-minded people over the collaborative way of thinking?
I really understand what you're saying there, because I worked for people who thought things were too fluffy. They felt that the names, it wasn't so much that they understood what it was trying to achieve, but they didn't like the names of the clauses, like working together, staying together, they felt was fluffy. I would emphasize the extra value that you create for the client and how you can do that using effective process management. One of the key requirements is continuous improvement. To be honest, there's so much in it that will appeal to technical people, but I would say that innovation and value creation is how to sell it to technical people. If you look at that and the continuous improvement, and also for more procurement people and the contract people, say how this ensures through the exit strategy and through partner selection and onboarding and all the value analysis you have to do, that's also something that would sell it to them.
Right, we've hit 7 o'clock, so I will. One last question from Luke, who says, would you carry out some form of behavioural analysis of potential suppliers if you want to go into collaborative plan with them?
That's where the internal sort of workshops are really useful. Is you would actually do what I do is an internal risk analysis. I'll just go and look up, because I've got a template for this. Actually, got a template for everything. No, I don't. I'm not Mr. 85 templates. Just about to go in. It won't be a moment. Yes, I have an initial risk assessment template that me and the person who suggested it complete together, or complete in parallel and join together, and we take to the steering group, or we do it after the steering group has brought up that supplier or a JV partner or client. It's nearly there, I promise. You do have to think about I really sort of think you do have to think about your experience of them. You know, your long-term experience. It's like that. Here's one of my templates. You need to include relationship risks, you know. If their behaviours have always been pretty problematical, you've got to think, are they, you know, is it going to affect our reputation dealing with them? You know, that's a really thing. That's why SWOT analysis are really good. You know, is it going to affect our reputation by working in a collaborative relationship with them? Or, you know, to put it bluntly, are they going to bring us down? And remember, you will be using collaborative requirements as you'll review them in terms of objectives. So identified risks might be long-term aggressive behaviour, you know, or to make an old joke, you know, they set up the claims and QS department on site before they put in all the construction engineers. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.